Thank you very much for joining us today for this episode of the MirYam Institute situational briefing. I'm joined here by Colonel Grisha Yakubovich, who concluded his military service in 2016 as the head of the Civil Department for the Coordination of Government Activities in the Territories, also known as C.O.G.A.T. He currently serves as a policy and strategy consultant to various international NGOs, and Grisha has more than 30 years of first-hand experience initiating and implementing high-level cooperation projects between Israelis and Palestinians in the public and private sectors. I'm delighted to have him with us here today. Thank you so very much, Grisha, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to dive straight into it, Grisha, because we were scheduled to talk about UNRWA, and we're actually going to speak about a different subject, which is the operation that took place in Rafah in the early hours of the morning, about 1 o'clock in the morning. And I'd like to, with your permission, cut straight to that. Does that work for you?
Yeah, of course, no problem.
Okay, so in some very positive news, or as a result of some very positive news, Fernando Marman, who's a 61-year-old male, and Louis Har, who's a 70-year-old male, who had both been kidnapped from Kibbutz Nir Yitzhak on the morning of October 7th, have been reunited with their families. IDF Special Forces rescued the pair from Hamas captivity in Rafah in the southern Gaza Strip early on Monday, marking the first successful extraction in months, the previous one having been Ori Mides back in October. And the pair are said to be in very good condition. That operation involved battles with Hamas terrorists and a massive series of Israeli airstrikes in Rafah. As I mentioned, the operation began at 1 a.m. and the apartment in which the hostages were held was breached at 1:49 a.m. by our forces. And Grisha, while we celebrate that news, we of course remember that there are believed to be 130 hostages who still remain inside Gaza. Not all of them are presumed to be alive. And we also mourn the loss of 2 soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces who were killed in a separate incident, those being Sergeant First Class Adi Eldor, 21 years of age, and Sergeant First Class Alon Kleinman, 21 years of age. So, Grisha, with that context, I was wondering if you could please start us up by telling us what you know about this particular operation.
Well, I want to start actually from Hamas. Yahya Sinwar declared, and not only him, all the leaders of Hamas declared that it will be impossible that the IDF will be able to release some alive hostages. Now, people in Gaza believed him because this is Sinwar, and whatever he promised, he delivered. But actually, by having or making or leading this heroic raid in the heart of Rafah, that is the heart of Hamas now, okay? This is the only place where the IDF still did not visit, if I may say so, boots on the ground. And we all know that the remains of Hamas abilities are in Rafah, are there. And as we assume that Hamas will somehow also remove the hostages from the north and then from the center with the people that evacuated to Rafah. So the hostages also evacuated with the people to Rafah. But it just shows again how brutal Hamas are and how they have no values, because again, they use the people of Gaza as human shields to move hostages from one side to the other. But let's refer again. Sinwar promised and he failed. Actually, there is a guy called Dawiri, and Dawiri is a famous Jordanian guy that always explains on Jordanian TV and Al Jazeera. He's a retired general, I think, about all the moves that Hamas does, Israel does, and he's always pro-Hamas, okay? Until this morning. And Adawiri said that actually this is a military operation that will justify that will provide the reason to Israel to invade Rafah, because we succeeded to release 2 alive hostages. It means if 2 are there, if 2 are alive, and Hamas used the civilians to move them, and to use the civilians as human shield. Probably if Israel will continue with the invasion or with the operation or with the war, it depends what you ask, we will be able to succeed to release them all. Now, what is the price? 100 Palestinians died in Rafah during this operation. 200 were injured. There's a huge pressure now on Hamas, guys, if they are alive, and this is what Israel did, and you are embarrassed, it means Israel really has a real attention to enter to Rafah. We suffer, release the prisoners, release the hostages. And I think that we are on the right path, we are on the right way. This is exactly the force that is needed, and we will need to wait few weeks more and to continue with the military pressure harder. And I hope that we will succeed with few more operations like that. You know, it reminds me in a way Entebbe. And people who don't remember Entebbe is when terrorists kidnapped an airplane with Jews and Israelis, and they landed in Entebbe in Africa. And an amazing operation. We released them all, and the brother of Bibi Netanyahu was killed there, Yoni Netanyahu. It's a famous thing. Well, yes, it's not an airplane, and yes, it's not in Uganda, but it's, I think, way more dangerous and way more complicated to release two Jews, two Israeli hostages, civilians at the age of 60 and 70, that were brutally kidnapped by terrorists into Gaza, and they kept them in the heart of Rafah, in Shabura, a very crowded place with 1.3 million Palestinians there. And they even don't blink, knowing that if the IDF will enter, there unfortunately be some casualties, civilians, and they don't care. So I think that this is an amazing operation, a heroic one. This is who we are as the Israeli Jewish state, with our high morality, ready to pay any price that is needed to release and to bring back the civilians that were kidnapped. It's a message to the world.
Grisha, I want to pick up on something that you mentioned there, because I've heard reports that Hamas is so embarrassed and so pressured, to your point, as a consequence of this operation and its success, that they're actually denying they even had responsibility for guarding and holding on to these particular hostages. They were somehow under the care of some other relevant party. Have you heard anything about that?
Yes. I read about it a lot. Actually, I don't need to read this. Actually, they provide us the information using platforms. And what I can tell you that after hours on hours of a lot of thought, there was one journalist, pro-Hamas journalist, that published the following. Actually, those hostages were kept by a civilian family in Rafah, and the resistance was not even involved in that. And Israel also lies because there was no fightings between the IDF special forces and Hamas. And that's why they were not released actually from the resistance. They were actually released from a simple family. They are embarrassed. This is a huge embarrassment to Hamas and to what they declared and to the heroism that they showed. And actually, this is, I think, the first week that I read on Facebook in Arabic, okay, bloggers and very famous and influencers in Gaza that call Sinwar a rat. And then find his death. And it's about time that he released them and stop the suffering.
So what do you think the impact of this operation is likely to be on the psyche of Sinwar and of Hamas as a whole, whether inside the Gaza Strip or whether beyond the Gaza Strip? And also, if I can ask you another question that I think is on the minds of many people, is Sinwar still alive in your estimation?
I think he's still alive. And if something is, when they publish something, the people, not Hamas, they always say the truth. And they call him on social media the madman, the crazy man. Yes, I think that he was drunk from his success. And I don't think that he's dead. He's, of course, he's terrified. He's afraid. He's underground. It's not only him. It's also the people who surround him that force him to stay underground, so he will not be killed. Because the moment we will know something about him, he will be immediately eliminated, and this will be our victory. The picture of this is how a victory should look like. Okay, it's not that I'm a cruel guy. Okay, I'm really not. That I'm that I love life, and I love people, and I love animals and humanity. And you cannot blame me that I'm racist or cruel. I saved Palestinians' life during my career in protected edge 5,000. I helped Palestinians in my entire career, but at this event, with this unfortunate October 7th war, the picture, the victory, how it should look like is Pinkelman, the commander of the Southern Command, standing on the highest hill in Gaza, Ali Muntar, with two heads in his hands, Sinwar and Haniya. And this is what the people that surround Sinwar doesn't want us to achieve, because they know that the moment it will happen, all this victory that they achieved, and they achieved it, okay, because for the first time, an Arab entity defeated the IDF. This is how it looks like in Palestinian, in Muslim history. And to delete that victory, this is what we should do. So that's why I believe that he is alive. That's why I believe that his people forced him to stay underground also. I think that those two hostages were released have no impact on him. He's disconnected. It has an impact only on the people, because he still holds another 128.
I mean, Grisha, this operation took place in Rafah, which, as you've mentioned, has been in the headlines for several reasons, not the least of which is that the city of Rafah is the last remaining stronghold of Hamas. Though not the most potent stronghold of Hamas is actually Khan Yunis, the Khan Yunis brigade, which the IDF is in the midst of dismantling very, very handily as we speak. But Prime Minister Netanyahu is really telegraphing his intention to instruct the IDF to launch an attack on the city of Rafah and to demolish Hamas in that area. Now, I couldn't ask for a better guest than you on this subject, because this is a particular interest. For there is the city of Rafah, then there is the Rafah crossing, which abuts the Sinai Peninsula, which is this huge, largely barren landmass that is the sovereign territory of Egypt. And it's through the Sinai Peninsula and then through the Rafah crossing, through which Hamas, for a period of many years, has smuggled contraband, material, personnel, and terrorist know-how. It was deployed against Israel on October the 7th. But Rafah is also the area where 1.2, 1.3 million Palestinians are gathered at this time. And then you also have the Philadelphia corridor. For the benefit of our viewers and our listeners, I'd like you to tell us about the distinction between Rafah, the city, Rafah, the crossing, and the Philadelphia corridor, please, if you would.
Can we see the map, Ben?
Yes.
Okay. So I shared the map in English, as you can see, so the audience will understand. Can you see the marker also?
Yes.
Excellent. So this is the Gaza Strip, the brown, okay? This is the northern border of the Gaza Strip. It is only 10 kilometers from Ashkelon, the biggest city that is close to Gaza. It's on the beach, okay? So actually, when you want to target Ashkelon, you just need to go with the beach line and you hit the city, simple as it is. This is what they did. This is the northern border of the Gaza Strip, 6 kilometers, exactly. And here the fence breaks like a knee to the south. This is the knee of Bet Hanon, because this is close to Bet Hanon. And from here it goes down to the south to the triangle border between Gaza, Israel, and Egypt. This is the area, this is the place that we all called Kerem Shalom. Okay, this is where the crossing between Gaza and Israel is located. So until the war, almost 1,000 trucks brought goods from Israel to this crossing back to Gaza. This is this is the natural border between the Gaza Strip, the Mediterranean. Okay, and this is the border between the Gaza Strip and Egypt. 13.9 kilometers exactly of a border. That in 2005, Israel disengaged from the Gaza Strip, and Israel also evacuated this border. So since 2005 and until now, actually this border is controlled by the Egyptians, and from 2005 to 2007 by the PA, and later on in June 2007 when Hamas conquered Gaza Strip by Hamas and Egypt. Okay, during the Muslim Brotherhood regime in Egypt, underneath this border, Hamas and Egypt operated 1,000 tunnels. There was a tunnel dedicated to a product of goods from all types, weapons from all types and kinds that were smuggled from Sudan, Libya, through Egypt, underground into the Gaza Strip. Actually, you know what, Benjamin, even if you didn't ask me, I want to mention something, okay? I think that Egypt, as a neighbor country to us, has the full responsibility on what Hamas succeeded to build inside Gaza. I think that Egypt, it's not I think, I can even prove it, that Egypt is responsible in a way, on what Hamas on the massacre of October 7th, because they allowed, they cooperated, they knew, they could, okay, any war, choose any one of them, to make sure that Hamas will not be able to smuggle the Iranian technology, the Iranian weapon, or all the weapons from Libya into Gaza, and they actually allowed or assisted or helped or been a partner to Hamas to build this fortress of the Gaza Strip. You know, if during the Morsi regime, he supported 1,000 tunnels, and then came a Sisi and he tried to stop the tunnels, but actually, let's say he succeeded, okay? Only 80%, only 90%, okay? He could build a wall as we did, because we built an underground wall on the northern part and on the eastern part. And you've been with me on this border, and I showed it to you. This is an underground wall, 70 meters down in some places, that blocked their ability to use underground tunnels into Israel. They could do the same, and they could minimize the damage. They could minimize the amount of rockets that they launch. And this is their responsibility, even if they don't like it. So here, there are two crossings. The Rafah crossing, it's between Hamas and Egypt. And there's another crossing here close by. It's called Bab Salah ad-Din. It's somewhere here. It's not even on the maps because it's illegal. It's unofficial. So nobody will mark something unofficial on a map. This is the Middle East. Okay, this is how things are done. You do unofficial things and you don't mark them on the map. It means they don't exist.
Right.
As simple as it sounds. This is Rafah district here. And now there are something like 1.3 million people here in this district. Many people from the northern part of the Gaza Strip that moved to the area of Khan Yunis. And then from Khan Yunis, they moved to the south, to the area of Rafah. And this is actually the call of France today, and the Arab countries and the EU, worrying or sending letters to the government of Israel, be careful, because the moment you enter to Rafah, it will be a massacre. You know, Ben, I have a solution. I have a solution. I think that we should demand, not we, the Western world should demand from Egypt, because of their responsibility on Hamas military terror abilities, to open the borders of Egypt and to invite all the Gazans, all the innocent ones, because they will be checked, to live in temporary tents or houses in Egypt until we complete the mission here to eliminate Hamas abilities and to release the hostages. And after we clean it, and after we demilitarize the Gaza Strip, they can come back to Gaza. Simple as it sounds.
Grisha, there's so much that you've just said there. And
Next.
before I come back to you about those points, I want to ask you to just address yourself to one last area that I think people would benefit from your expertise and understanding. Tell us specifically about the Philadelphia corridor. Tell us how that's distinct and why Egypt does have something to say about Israel's operations along the Philadelphia corridor, but actually, in my opinion, has no right to be opining about what Israel does inside Rafah, which is firmly inside the Gaza Strip, as you've just shown us.
This is the Philadelphia corridor, okay? It's 13.9 kilometers, okay? Egypt built a wall on their side, a huge wall. I'm trying to find the picture. Maybe we will do it online. I will send it to you. And maybe your expert will be able to also show that, but let me see if I can find it, okay? While explaining where we are. So this is the corridor. And this is the corridor that is between two entities. One, an Arab state, a country, Egypt, with all the rights to defend their borders. And on the other side, a terror entity. And this corridor is, yes, on the ground. It looks like nobody can go through. It just looks like. Let's not forget that if during the Morsi regime in Egypt until 2013, he supported 1,000 tunnels, and as I said, the Sisi floated tunnels with full success, I'm not so sure. And even if it's with full success, I'm not sure that there is some collaboration between some Egyptians with Hamas that for money will do everything. And I will explain what do I mean by that, okay? Until 3 weeks ago, if somebody from Gaza wanted to get a visa to enter to Egypt through the crossing officially, if he paid $5,000, he got it very, very fast because he paid to the right guy on the Egyptian side. I just heard today that a ticket costs $10,000 per person. And it's corrupted money. You pay it to somebody illegally in Egypt, and wonders happen. You get a permit to cross and leave the Gaza Strip only for $5,000 or $10,000. So you expect me to believe that if there's a border here with, you know what? Hamas and Egypt agreed during the last years that 65% of the goods to Gaza will enter from Egypt to Gaza. It's a decision. There's a company named Abna Sina, the Sons of Sinai, and Hamas in Egypt decided and agreed upon a fact that Hamas will tax the goods on the side here in Gaza. Do you know how much money they made from those taxes?
Go on.
Then $700 million a year. Now, do you think that somebody in Egypt that is ready to risk his career for $5,000 will not risk his life for $700 million? It's a corrupted country. And I don't trust them, okay? Yes, I work with them. Yes, they are amazing. We did a great job together. But when it comes on the ground, when we face the reality, and the reality that people in Egypt, you know, it's 100 million people, the majority are hungry, and they will do everything to feed their families. So I don't see an intensive that they will not cooperate for money. So the only way that I would feel that the state of Israel is secured is only if the IDF enters to this corridor, conquers it, okay, asks Egypt politely to sit tight until we complete the job, so we will be able to secure our nation for the next generation. Because this is the biggest mistake that we did when we disengaged. I have nothing to say about the disengagement. Good, bad, wrong, right. Okay, I don't care. I have only one thing to say. The biggest mistake is that we left this corridor.
So Grisha, thank you very much for showing us that. Are you able to stop your screen share at this point? And I want to ask you another question. Do you think that it's likely that as a result of Prime Minister Netanyahu's determination and announcement that he does intend to operate inside Rafah, do you think it's likely that we'll see a softening of Hamas's negotiating position?
Well, I think that the only thing that will bring Hamas to change their demands is only the continuous pressure on Rafah.
And you think
there's no other way, Benjamin, no other way. And we already see that, okay? The ground shakes in Rafah. They understand that we mean what we say, and I would like to explain that, okay?
Yeah.
I would like to explain that. You know, you serve the IDF, Benjamin, and you don't need to be a general to understand a simple thing, and I'm sure that you were trained as a soldier to look at the map. If somebody will tell you, Ben, you are the commander, I want you to win the war, what would you do when it comes to Gaza? I'm sure that you will say, okay, I will take some forces from the north, okay, I will take some forces from the south, okay, I will make sure that they will have no supply, okay, I will create a Caesar maneuver from the north and the south and then cut them. Am I right?
none of it's rocket science.
Never mind, with rockets. So we fight them from the air, and you know this is
No. I said none of this is rocket science. This all makes perfect sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a simple commander on the ground will plan the same plan that I just shared with you in any army around the world, not only in Israel. We don't need to be geniuses to think like that. And I think that this is one of the mistakes that we did at the beginning when our politicians declared that we will do that and we will do that and we will do that, but actually nobody delivered. Now, what do I mean by that? Let me remind you, Minister Katz, before he became the Minister of Foreign Affairs, he was the Minister of Infrastructure. And he automatically said Gaza will not have a kilowatt of electricity, and he stopped it. And they will not drink even one drop of the water from Israel because we supply 12% to the Gaza Strip. And like a puppy, after a few days, Israel connected the Gaza Strip to water again. It means we showed them that we don't really mean what we say. Now, this is the Middle East. It's a very special, different language than people speak in the United States or in Europe. So if you don't mean what you say, and you ran and connected the water, it means when you say that you will eliminate Hamas, you don't really mean that. If I would be Gaza, be a guy from Gaza, this is how I would look on the reality. And then it lasted a month, and then another month, and then we moved everybody to the south, and we said, we have two goals. One is to release the hostages. Two is to make sure that Hamas will collapse. So people said, now, Israel doesn't really mean that. How can they release the hostages? Oh, surprise, we did it last night. One. Two, three things happened. Okay? Because what we needed to achieve is that the people of the Gaza Strip will start puking Hamas out of them. Okay? That's the goal. Now, you cannot achieve that when you don't mean what you say, because if they would start fighting Hamas and we don't really mean what we say, they will be afraid that after the day after the war, Hamas will kill them. But if you show them that we really mean what we say, they will start fighting Hamas back. And they will start telling nice stories like, where are the hostages? So the IDF will be able to continue with heroic operations. Now, what happened? The last week, the IDF killed 3 times policemen in Rafah. The IDF killed the same people who were responsible on the humanitarian aid that entered to Gaza, it was a very message to Hamas: you will not put your hands on that aid, and you will not be the ones to give it to the people. It's a clear message. We attacked 3 times the police, and you don't see the police anymore in Rafah. They are afraid. It means it's a message to the people: you will not see the police the day after. Number one. Number two, Israel exposed the tunnel under the UNRWA headquarters. Now, let's go back 3 weeks ago, Ben. There was a message that Israel complained that 13 UNRWA officials, workers, participated in the massacre on October 7th. And then suddenly, nothing happened. And suddenly somebody said that the IDF wrote a secret letter that there's no other option than leaving UNRWA on the ground, so UNRWA will continue helping Israel to be responsible of the people. Otherwise, we will have no other option. And then suddenly, Minister Gallant declared a plan. And he said, we will push aid into Gaza from the northern side, from army, actually sending a message that this is what we will do. We will find a solution to UNRWA. And then Bibi, Gantz, and Gallant also declared the last week and a half, we are on our way to Rafah. We are on our way to Rafah. And then we started to bomb in Rafah. And then we implemented this operation in Rafah. And then suddenly the Egyptians say, Israel, don't enter. Israel, don't do that. Israel, it will be dangerous. But nobody from Egypt said or threatened, Israel, if you do that, you risk the agreement. Actually, in the Middle Eastern language is Israel, please be our guest and do the job.
I think it's always fascinating to hear you put together the disparity between words and deeds, between intentions and actions, and how vital it is that there shouldn't be that gap when it comes to activities in the Middle East. Let me talk to you a little bit more about the Egyptians, because I completely agree with everything that you said about their responsibility. And Grisha, if only the Egyptians had been so judicious about letting that which threatened Israel into the Gaza Strip as it now is about letting Gazans into the Sinai Peninsula. And this really highlights world and global hypocrisy, because there's usually a call for neighboring and distant countries with the means of doing so to let in the displaced populations. We saw it in Syria, right? We saw Turkey open its borders and absorb Syrian refugees. We saw Germany take in 1 million Syrians during the Syrian civil war when it was at its most ferocious. We saw it again with Ukraine, where Poland took in Ukrainian refugees, and then countries further abroad, including the United States and Israel, accepted Ukrainian refugees.
Czechoslovakia, Canada, yes, many.
Yeah, exactly. And there's typically this 1-2 orthodoxy surrounding the issue of the intake of displaced populations. First, the countries that are able to do so that are able to accept these populations are implored to do so, and immediately thereafter they're applauded for doing that. But Grisha, here's where I want you to weigh in. It's just not the case where Israel and Gaza are concerned. Only in a context involving Israel, this is my view, is any talk about willful relocation of the displaced population utterly silenced and slandered. Only in a context involving Israel is the neighboring country, Egypt, permitted to refuse to accept a displaced population and supported in its refusal by other countries, such as those you've just mentioned. And only in the context of an enemy faced by Israel are we told that however difficult the circumstances may be for those who've been displaced by this war, that population still absolutely wants to live there, stay there, and remain there. And I just want to strengthen what you said, because I really believe that the global community should pressure Egypt to open its borders, to accept the Gazans into the Sinai Peninsula, and that Israel should, as you've said, seize and then hold the Rafah crossing. And why? Grisha, not merely because Egypt is the neighbor of the Gazans, but because Egypt Egypt is massively, massively culpable for what took place on October 7th. And by the way, let us not allow it to be forgotten that the only reason, by the way, that there are 1.2 million Gazans massed in the area of Rafah is that the IDF and the Israeli government has provided the succor and safety and the opportunity to locate to relative safety throughout the entire prosecution of this war, which is a war, incidentally, that was launched by a terror organization voted into office by a great many members of the Gazan population that is now in such strife. So let me ask you this. Do you think that Egypt will be compelled to open its border? Do you think that we will see the displaced population of Gaza move and migrate into the Sinai Peninsula? Or do you think that Israel is going to buckle to world opinion and start this incredibly complex operation of now moving the Gazans from the area of Rafah back up to the northern areas that will endlessly complicate the work of the soldiers who are operating in Gaza City and elsewhere north of Rafah? What do you think is the likely outcome, Grisha?
You know, Ben, if something good happened with the Gazans is that Hamas did for them is that they made them disciplined. I don't know if you know, but it's already started, even without asking them. The people from Rafah already started to move to the north to Khan Yunis.
Yes, I've seen that happening. Yes.
Only because of the operation that happened last night. It means Israel sent a clear message that we mean what we say. It's important, okay? Now let's go back. What was the first act that Sisi did when the war started? Do you remember? If not, I will remind you. He brought concrete to block the border between Gaza and Egypt. What did Anwar Sadat did when we implemented the peace agreement between Israel and Egypt? He said, Israel, I will not give up on an inch from my land except Gaza. He was a smart leader. Already then, he knew exactly why he wants everything except Gaza. Now, I would refer to what you've said, and because this is Israel, okay? And I want to turn over and say this is because of the Palestinians, not because the issue is not Israel and how Egypt reacts to Israel. And the thing is how the Arab world reacts when they hear Palestinians. Okay? What happened in Jordan at the 70s? Black September. The king kicked them away from there. Where? To Lebanon. And then what happened in Lebanon? A civil war. Who brought it on them? Palestinians. And there were the first Lebanon war. Who brought it on their hands? Palestinians. Who supported Iraq when they invaded Kuwait? Palestinians. You know what? Let me tell you a story, if I may. Okay, you have an objection? Let me tell you about the evolution of evil. And I hope I will surprise you. 3 months ago, I read about a mosque that the IDF bombed in Gaza named after Azam al-Ahmad. And I said, the name rings, and I started to check it. And I found out that Azam al-Ahmad was a nice sheikh, a famous sheikh, a Palestinian sheikh that was born in a village on the district of Jenin. You know, it's nice guys. And he was so passionate about helping his brothers in Afghanistan that at the late 70s, he moved to Afghanistan to help Taliban to fight the mighty enemies, the Russians. His approach and he's actually the first of modern jihad. Okay, he had a huge impact on Hamas and their manifest and their thoughts and their ideology. A huge impact. So when he fought the Taliban in Afghanistan, his wife sent him to the market to buy, if I'm not wrong, black pepper or red pepper. I don't remember exactly. And while he was trying to find the pepper, he bumped into a guy.
Go on.
Yeah, he bumped into somebody in the market. It's a guy with a beard, and his name is Osama bin Laden. I think you know the guy, right? And this meeting created something that we all know, Al-Qaeda. We all know Al-Qaeda, right? September 11th. But we didn't know that the guy that is behind Al-Qaeda, can you hear me? Or again,
I can hear you clearly. I can hear you clearly.
Ben?
I can hear you clearly, Grisha.
Okay. We all know what Al-Qaeda did on September 11th, of course. Okay. Now, it's radicalism. That out of radicalism grows something way more radical. So, you know, Muslim Brotherhood, and then jihad, and then modern jihad that invented Al-Qaeda, and then other people in the Middle East watched them and said, oh, come on, guys, you are not radical. We will invent something way more radical. This is how ISIS was created. You know, the guys with the suits that are chopping heads. And then ISIS traveled in the Middle East. You know, in Iraq, they made some problems. In Syria, some problems. Afghanistan, and then they reached also to Egypt, to Sinai. And Sinai, they fought the Egyptian army and, you know, this black flag. And then some people that were not, that said that Hamas is not radical, people from Gaza, joined them in Sinai to fight the Egyptians in Sinai, and they died holding the flag of ISIS in Sinai, Palestinians. By the way, even the nephew of Yahya Sinwar that left Gaza, because he said in Gaza, Dad, you are not so radical. I will show you what is radicalism, died holding the flag of ISIS in Sinai. And more sons of Hamas seniors and jihad seniors in Gaza left to Sinai and fought for ISIS in Sinai. And then Assisi won. And he succeeded not to eliminate the ideology, but the people, okay, of ISIS. By the way, there was a neighbor country, I don't remember the name, that helped him to achieve that. It will come to me later. But what happened to the Gazans who joined ISIS that stayed alive? They went back home. What is home? Gaza. And this is when ISIS and Hamas and Page met each other. So actually, Ben, what came out from Gaza on October 7th is not ISIS, is something way worse than ISIS, made by Palestinians. It started with Palestinians, with Daesh, not Daesh, with Al-Qaeda, and it ended up on a circle of evil around the whole Middle East, entering from our back door, Gaza, something that I still don't have the name. I call it evil, but not ISIS. When you say Hamas is ISIS, you flatter them.
Grisha, I want to thank you for that, because I think that you're talking in such a straightforward manner. You're expressing just what we're facing so clearly. So many people want to delude themselves and pretend that this is a matter of anything other than an evil act by a people that have shown themselves to bring very, very real problems, very, very real challenges, and yes, acts of very profound, pronounced and expressed evil to just about anywhere that they go in the area. And it's my sincere hope that the Israel Defense Forces, and dare I say the Israeli government more than the Defense Forces, because I think the IDF is very resolute and very, very dedicated to the idea of bringing about an end to Hamas rule inside the Gaza Strip. I hope that the government is as resolute. I believe that it is. But I do hope that we'll see that conclusion come about soon. As our Prime Minister is currently saying, it may be that it's within arm's reach even at this stage. I do hope that the IDF will operate conclusively inside Rafah, as I believe you do. And I do hope that we will hold the Rafah crossing, the Philadelphia corridor, and that we will never again bequeath security for that which is smuggled into the Gaza Strip to any country or any power or any government or any administration other than Israel and the Israel Defense Forces. We've seen what's happened, and it cannot be allowed to repeat itself. I want to thank you, Grisha, for being with us. I always enjoy hearing your perspectives. I know that you are among the few true experts on this subject and on this matter. You have a mastery of the complexity and an ability to express it with simplicity. And for that, I thank you, and I look forward to the next time that we meet each other. probably back in Israel very, very soon. And all the very best to you and reiterated
I
appreciation.
just hope that now we all understand why Egypt will not accept Gazans.
Yeah, well, maybe it needs to be made to do so.
Yeah.
On that, Grisha,
Thank you for having
we'll
me.
speak again.
Thank you.
All the very best.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.